I'm ready to start the laborious job of sanding, and this is my little Ryobi oscillating drum sander. A drum sander that is just used on a drill press and does not move up and down is about useless for pattern making. First of all, you wear out the drum in one spot, but secondly, it gives you, I guess you could say, annular rings that prevent the pattern from pulling out of the sand as smoothly as one might want. Now the problem with this is that the table does not tilt. This is just 90 degrees, or I should say it wants to be 90, but it's not really 90. It's because this is really a piece of work. But at the high school we had a $3,000 one that was made for pattern making, and it would cast iron table would tilt in two different axes. It was just a wonderful machine. Real long stroke compared to this too. This is not a bad machine. I paid 75 bucks used for it with a bunch of drums, which was too much, and I bought it with the intent purpose of pattern making, and I've had it for a couple of years and not used it, so finally I'm using it. Alright, what am I going to do to produce that 2-degree angle that I need? Well, I did a couple things. I designed and built this table at 3 degrees and then decided I didn't want 3 degrees, but what this amounts to is a piece of plywood with some wedges on it, I guess you could say. And the idea was, right like that, allows me to get a 3-degree angle. Well, I changed my mind. 3 degree was, I told you, was too much. So I came up with the 2-degreer. And this is really a simple one. I wish I'd have thought about this. These are just door shims like you get at any store, a whole line of them, and these happen to be right about 2 degrees. So with that clamped in place, I'm ready to go to work. Remember, this was already sawed to an angle, but this is still going to be pretty laborious. This is about a medium grit. And I'm going to take it down not just to the pencil line but to the scribe line, and I'm real well lit here, and I'm wearing these, and there we go. I'm done with the inside circle and checking it with my little gauge here. I'm right on 2 degrees. Now I think you can understand, you woodworkers, it's much harder to sand the end grain here than it is the regular plain grain, whatever you want to call it. Well, I switched to about a 7/8 drum, and now I've got to go in here and redo these angles. Since this is a smaller drum, I have to make sure that I keep moving this so I don't end up with a little radius in there. So I'll be moving back and forth, at a fairly good rate, and then it'll have to be flipped around to do this side. I'll have to move the clamp. One clamp will be in the way, so I won't show all that because we're running a little late here. I'm back in the basement shop now, and I have thoroughly sanded everything on the interior here. This was a little difficult in here, I have to confess, the spark chute. I hope that will be all right, but you can see the angle there. This is still going to be a tough draw out of the sand, and I hope that it will work. Well, now that this is done and to the scribe line, I'm ready to glue it on the plywood, and I guess you can understand why I did that sanding first, because once it's glued onto this plywood, there is no sanding with the drum sander. It would all be hand sanding, which is just almost impossible, especially down in a blind hole. So what I'm going to do now is put some yellow glue on here, glue it on to the birch, Baltic birch, and lay that heavy surface plate on there, and then come back in an hour. I'm going to go eat breakfast then, and I'll see you when my belly's full. Here's another one of my non sequiturs. This picture was just sent to me in an email by Ernie Noah. Hi, Ernie. And I just love this picture. This is a trade school or high school, I'm not sure. Oh, probably from the 30s. There's me with the bald head. And notice the line shaft. How many things can you find wrong here? Now, those boys look like they're about 12 or 13 years old at the very most. And I believe these are South Bend lathes, but I'm not sure. And as the Mormon church once said, I don't care how you bring them, as long as you bring them young. Rim shot. All right, it's 90 minutes later. Let's take a look at this. Well, there's really nothing to see. The glue is all dry or hardened or whatever you want to call it. So I'll take this over to the bandsaw right now and just saw this out. Looks good. Yeah, I noticed in the Big R flyer they had coffee on sale, so I told my wife, go down and buy the limit. So she did, and so I like to be well stocked. But the point being here that a 2-pound can of coffee is not 2 pounds. Well, that's not a new thing, but we're cheated again. Cheated again. All right. I at least got this into a workable size now, so I'm going to go over to the bandsaw and saw 2 degrees all the way around. Starting to shape up. I'm at the bandsaw 2 degrees. Now notice how fast I'm going to saw because I had 3 cups of coffee. This is a most difficult acute corner to work on and get all of the right angles. And this is the way I did it on one of my other ones. I hope this doesn't seem too stupid, but I'm over on the Bridgeport mill and I think I'm going to heck, I'm going to do it. I'm taking a 3-degree end mill. I guess you call these die sinkers. I already have one in the chuck here in the collet. And I'm going to go in here and all the way down into this scrap wood here and try to work this out. Now that's a different degree, that's 3 degrees, but I guess I don't mind having a little bit extra degree because this is a corner that would be also difficult to withdraw from the sand. Now on the original one I played around, as you can see, with other samples over the last few days. I originally also made this spark chute with an end mill. So let's see what happens. I'd like to welcome Shars to my list of sponsors, so you'll be seeing some of their tools popping up, and I just acquired this beautiful IP67 caliper. So now I went back out in the garage and I used the 2-inch drum sander right here to blend this in. Did you see how nicely that blends in? Now if I had a lick of sense, I'd put some filler in here and re-sand that just a little bit. I just got some little undercuts there in that knot. I should have tried to avoid the knot, but I did not. We got an angle here, and using my little gauge, make yourself, well, nobody's ever going to do this, but you can see that I got 2 degrees all the way around, and this again is the most difficult corner here, and it's going to be a little extra thick, but that's fine because there's going to be a screw in there anyway. Now I should have broken this corner on the sander before I put the birch in, but I did not. Hindsight has 20/20 vision. But essentially the sanding is done. Now, I had just put a new 80 grit on the 6-inch sander, so that's rougher than a cob when you compare it to the smoothness here of the drum sander. But you know, I'm so hesitant to spend a lot of time on this because I'm going to make one of them. It's not like I'm going to make hundreds. So, but I'm trying to teach proper techniques, at least as I know it. I hope this makes sense to the naysayers here who have totally rejected the 3D printing. And you know, here's, boy, that doesn't show up well. You'll be seeing a lot more of this, so you have a fair warning now. But other than what Kevin did for me here with the CAD, how simple is this? And you can make it any size you want. You can adjust it up and adjust it down. You got all of your angles. There's no sanding. Imagine if this was done on 3D printing, how simple it would be, because I'm still not done. I got fillets to put in here and some other parts, but I just don't think that some people understand the significance of making something like this with 3D printing. Now, I'm still old school, don't get me wrong, and I'm going back to doing it with wood, but you're going to see some of this appearing too. And just think of a pattern that's even 10 times more complex than this, because this is a simple one. How you could do that, and then, you know, if this doesn't turn out, I would have to saw something off and re-glue and re-sand and repaint. So there's just a lot of steps in making modifications or revisions, where right here it's all done on the screen, but not by me, by experts in New Jersey and Austin, Texas. I didn't mean for that to be a rant, but possibly it came across that way. But all right, let's get on with the show, if anyone in fact is watching. Off the subject just a bit, I went to the Red Cross yesterday and they tapped a pint of O negative. But as I was having that done, I get so insulted when they ask me if I've ever been to a prostitute in Jamaica, and then they wanted to examine my arms for needle tracks and things like that. I get kind of a kick out of it. I know why they got to do it, but I'm totally offended. So then when she was tapping me, she's making light conversation saying, you know, what did you do for a living before you became so ancient and now do nothing? I said, well, I was a teacher. And she said, well, what did you teach? And I thought, oh no, I just hate when they ask me that, because there's always been a sense of embarrassment for me when I have to say I was a shop teacher. And always you hear their voice drop and they say, oh, like you weren't a real teacher. You know, why didn't you teach math or chemistry or something? So I've always had that that little bit, I'm insulted by it, but yet I realize that people that have never taken shop think that the shop classes were worthless and that the shop teachers were like coaches, you know, and then we just didn't do anything. And all right, enough of that rant. Let's get on with this. I want to find the center of this, because I really had no good way to do that. So to locate the center, and I do not intend to drill that 2-inch hole. Where's my sample? I am going to drill the hole later, not 2 inches, 1 3/4, with this in aluminum. Now I could do it right now as well, but if I did, then in the end that's one more angle that I have to worry about withdrawing, and so I'm not. Also, this will be done later. Did I say that? The actual spot for the attachment will be done later, so you know that will be sawn out. So let me find the center for now. Hermaphrodite, where are you? You know, now we have to have special bathrooms for hermaphrodites. It's comical. It is shocking. So this one's a little too small. It's a brown and sharp, so this is a larger sterret. And I had to take the probe out and sharpen it, and it turns out that's not even a hardened piece of steel, but it'll do the job here. So what I'm going to do is just swing some arcs here. And I know that won't show up for you, probably won't show up for me. But this should essentially find the center for me. I like to do it in 3 or 4 spots, and I think it does show up. So that's my center. So how's that for one of the thousands of different uses for the hermaphrodite caliper? All right, now for some related information. These are fillets for pattern making. These items were given to me, number one, here are some of the wax ones by Lee Chadwick in Canada. And he gave me various sizes of the wax, and from several different sources, but mainly my friend Chet Jacobs gave me a lot of this leather in different sizes. They also make it in plastic. Some people use what amounts to body putty, and it's put in there, you know, as a paste, and the fillet tools run around there. But I'm going to use a combination here of the leather and the wax. I've got so much of it, and I did send this out to Train Man Dave out in New Jersey, some of that. Remember that? This is way too big, and I got some that's way too small, but this is just right. Alright, enough of this charade. Who am I fooling? I made one of these a few days ago, and it's done and it's ready to go. So you can see how much time I'm spending. But what I did on this one, remember that there has to be several places to which I can attach the cover. So one screw will go here. That's plenty thick for me to drill and tap a hole. The other will be right here, and the third one right here. So how did I make that? Well, that's simply a piece of dowel. Remember, this is probably the part that'll be cut out, more or less, what you see in black. And, where was I here? Oh, okay. I took a dowel and turned a 2 or 3 degree taper on it, and then I cut it in half, a little bit less than half, and I glued it in place. And it has to be small enough so it doesn't hit the wheel. I might have to do some milling in there, I don't know. That pencil line you see there is more or less the size of the wheel, the 5-inch wheel. Alright, what is this big plotty thing? Why didn't I use one of those here too? Well, this not only will be a place for me to put a screw to hold the cover on, but also from right here, once that's sawed off, I'll be drilling and tapping a couple holes. And why? For this, or just one probably, right here. That's the spark arrestor, or whatever you call that thing to keep the spark from wrapping around. I don't really know that's necessary. A lot of people throw those away on their grinders, or they never bring them into adjustment, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So that's one serving dual purpose. This is tapered in really 4, this is a difficult piece to make. It's tapered on 4 sides. 1, 2, 3 at 2 or 3 degrees, and the back side reversed. That is just the opposites. So how did I do that? The reason I made it out of aluminum is just was so awkward to make it out of wood, and I end up with a lot of failures, but I don't show my failures. I try not to. So I did that anyway with the tapered end mill in the milling machine, kind of like what I showed you right here. And then in the end, maybe I didn't follow through on this, but I ended up back on the spindle sander for this. But the reason that I ran the tapered end mill in there, it helped me to locate it, to see where it's truly going to be, so I didn't saw or sand it too deep and ruin something, and then have to fill it. Now I said fill it, not fill it. Is everybody happy? Now, I guess I didn't explain the purpose of a fillet, but if we don't have a fillet in here, what happens is that's a sharp corner, and molten metal does not like a sharp corner, so there's a marked tendency for it to shrink or tear down there. Much more with some pattern designs than others. Also, it helps release it, and to me it looks a lot better too. But if you examine castings anywhere, you're going to see fillets on them, and this is how the fillets are put in. Leather, I just told you the different kinds, but since I'm essentially done here, and other than it ought to be painted, I don't know if I will, it ought to be painted because I'm using, well, if it was water-based sand, the water could damage the pattern, but I'm only making one of. If it's oil-based, which it will be, because I'm going to cast this in aluminum with Petrobond, the oil soaks into it. So I think I will probably put some primer on it, undecided yet, but I'm really done here. But I want to show how to put fillets in on this. So this is just going to be kind of a dummy piece. Again, this is a flat back pattern. All right. After selecting the correct size, and the reason I didn't like the larger stuff, I just had trouble curling it in there. Wax, well, I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but I used a combination here. I used leather and then wax here, and actually there probably should be a fillet right in here too, but I'm going to try it without it. If that's a problem, and that shouldn't need a fillet there. Notice how I did the corner here. It's more or less mitered, and then I filled it with a little bit of wax. I probably should fill these. Reasonably satisfied at this point. This should be filled too, but I'll just file that off later on. It's no biggie. Alright, let's do a short piece of leather. Now the leather can be cut with a scissors or a knife or whatever. So I'll just run this short piece in here. So the first thing to do is to put some glue on it, and it could be white glue or yellow glue. I believe they make special glues for that too, but I don't see the need for it. Is it messy? Yes. So I think, did I talk about the fillet tools? Remember I showed these in one of my other videos, but this is a complete set of Pattern Maker's fillet tools. Different size balls for different size radii, different size fillets. I'm going to use the small one. I polished it up a bit. These were a bit tarnished. They really should be chrome plated, like a trailer hitch. Alright. Did you ever notice a trailer hitch? Boy, I got enough glue on there. A trailer hitch with chrome on it rusts in one day. Yes, one day. But they look pretty on the shelf at the auto store. I'd rather let that hang over like that. And I should have had a wet rag here. Where's my tool? See how nice that goes in? What the heck is that? This leather is absolutely ancient, but it's still very supple and soft. See how nice that is? And then, using a knife like, or my X-Acto knife like this, I can cut it something like this at an angle. My hand in the way, and I'll go back with this. Then I will wipe it. And how awesome is that? And it could have gone all the way around, but it'll be interrupted for these other pieces. You might have seen me in other videos just put Bondo in there, and then wiping this with lacquer thinner or something, do that. But there's a lot of cleanup, and you got to work fast because Bondo, you know, starts to set up. But that is an excellent method, and they sell, the Pattern Maker suppliers sell product. It used to be called Tough Fill. I don't know if they still make that or not, but there were various synthetics that they use. That went pretty fast, other than the mess. Now let me talk real briefly about wax. I'm going to pull this out before it sets up. Now concerning the wax, there are different ways of doing this, but again we're using one of these, but you can also get these that are electric. They look something like a soldering iron, but they have a soldering iron for you guys over in England who don't know how to pronounce. Boy, I really run roughshod over some people today. No offense. But boy, people don't mind offending me in the comments, I tell you. Read through some of those. I take out the really hurtful ones. Alright, using an alcohol lamp like this, one would heat this, see? And then melt the wax into the corner. But I want to tell you what happened yesterday. I hadn't done this in a long time, so I'm just, well, I was practicing one is what I was doing. I rehearsed, you know. Some of you are thinking, it doesn't seem like you rehearsed. All right, so I took my bottle of alcohol, had the lid off, and I partially filled it, as you see here, denatured alcohol. Yeah, at the blood bank, they asked me if I was allergic to alcohol. I thought they were talking about whiskey. So, all right, so I put some in here. Then I took this, and I like to prime the wick, you know, so I get some right there. Well, did you see what I just did here? Okay. Then I put this back in. I got my igniter. Where is it here? I lit this. The flame went down here and my hand was on fire. I was terrified. And I tried to put it out. It wouldn't go out. Finally, and I could feel the heat building up. I could smell the hair. Finally, I stuck my hand between my knees and got it out. Now, this probably only took 2 seconds, but I thought, then it hurt. I thought, all right, I ran it underwater, but I thought, you know, I'm injured. And my wife wasn't home, and so my heart was beating rapidly, so I just waited a while, and then I thought, well, it's not even red yet. But to make it, I was just fine. So with the alcohol burning off and hadn't had a chance to burn my skin, but boy, be careful. I'm admonishing myself for my own stupidity. I interrupt this train of thought on the wax fillet for just a few minutes because I got something gluing up. And so I'll get back to that, but let me just talk about this. The pattern has this corner broken. Now I think I'll sand that a little bit more, but in other words, we want no sharp corners. So I've already taken sandpaper to this, going all the way around and on the inside, and I got just a little bit more maybe to do here. So I'll do that real quickly, and then I'm going to put a coat of the Rust-Oleum primer on it, both sides. I don't think that'll take real long to dry. I'm going to go outside for that. Won't show it. Who wants to see someone paint? And then I'll come back in and give you that wax demonstration. This is a page out of an older Kent Collins catalog. So you can see the wax came on a spool as well. I got a spool of that out in the garage, but it looks like it's been damaged. Also in boxes like I have here, so this is all wax. And on the opposing page here, there's the leather fillet. It comes in many different sizes. As I said, there are the fillet tools. And I guess I forgot to mention that you could get the fillet in wood for straight runs. It's actually just like molding, almost like a cove molding. And all of the other supplies as well. And here again, Freeman was one of the big suppliers, and then Ken Collins sold this master wax fillet. And there were always sizes. Where's the size? I think that's on the end right here, 1/4 inch radius. Okay, I'm heating up the tool. You got to be careful with these flames because sometimes if the wick is clean you can't see it. It's almost an invisible flame. But I've got a piece of the fillet already laying in there, and sometimes you got to play around with the heat. That was not hot enough. But yet you don't want it so hot that it disintegrates on you. You just want to lay it in there like that. Heat it up a little more, but if you had an electric one, you know, it would, I believe, have a thermostat and maintain a constant heat. So that lays in there just nice, doesn't it? You know, my dad had some of this when we were kids. He used to do a little pattern making, and we liked to chew on it. Beeswax. It's beeswax. That's what it is. Maybe it's a synthetic now. I'm not really sure. So you can see how I've laid that in there, and then that could be trimmed off with a knife. Now notice, this is what I don't like about it. See how the wax builds up out here? And you got to go clean that up. So there's a lot of hand work. Now it can also be used exterior, like this. It wouldn't be in the case of this pattern, this is just a sample. But you could use it inside out, horizontal, vertical, whatever you need. But anyway, that is how you would use wax fillet. Pretty neat, huh? Raise your hand if you've never seen this done. Alright, enough on fillets. The paint is drying on the real one. Okay, there's 2 coats of primer on here, sanding between coats and then sanding after the last coat with 500 grit paper, so it's pretty smooth now, but you can see that end grain especially was very thirsty, and it could probably benefit by a few more coats or a finish coat, but it's not going to get it because it's just a one-time shot. And just to point out that the American Foundryman Society did have specific colors to be used on patterns and core boxes and core prints, and all the different parts were different colors so that the molder could identify what to do with the pattern. That being aside, that concludes this video on pattern making, and in the next video, be sure and watch it, the next part of this series, remember it's a long series, will be casting. So tomorrow I'll start that and I'll make an aluminum casting. We'll see if this pulls okay from the sand, and if it does, it's a success. If it does not, it might require some minor modifications. But thank you for watching. This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and I'll see you in that next part. Hope you liked the video.